Welcome to About Seniors Talk TV. I'm your host, Victor Oliveira. Growing old is not for the faint of heart. It takes planning, determination, and courage. Today's seniors are more resilient and vibrant and seek greater independence and control over their own lives. Having said that, there are some things we simply can't control. It's our health. One of the main health concerns that can impact our ability to sustain our independence is cognitive impairment. Countless clients and families throughout the region of Peel are faced with crucial decisions relating to a loved one who's afflicted with dementia-related diseases. My next guest will shed some light on this topic. Brandi Deimling is a business development coordinator for the Alzheimer's Society for the region of Peel and has been with the organization for about 6 years. Similar to her character, Peel's Alzheimer's Society is innovative and passionate about the cause it serves. Being the largest chapter in Canada, Brandi is happy to be working in a business development and fundraising to assist in the Society's development and expansion. Please welcome Brandi Deimling.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the Alzheimer's Society in general for Peel.
Well, Alzheimer's Society Peel has existed since 1983. It was a very small chapter that was created by 3 individuals who were caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease, and they realized the lack of psychosocial support in the community. So they formulated this chapter, which has now grown to 38 chapters across Ontario, as well as provincial and national chapter. But for us, we focus specifically on the Peel region. So Mississauga, Brampton, parts of Bolton and Caledon, South Etobicoke, and parts of Halton as well. And we provide psychosocial support for families who have been affected by Alzheimer's disease. We provide services to the person who has the disease, as well as their caregivers and families. We operate 5 locations throughout the region of Peel. We operate 5-day programs. We have a 24-hour respite care home. We have counseling services, support groups, free public education sessions, training, our First Link referral program, and we also have volunteer opportunities with our organization. From its conception to now, we've grown tremendously from a staff of 3 individuals to 126, making us the largest chapter in Canada. And for us, in the last fiscal year, we actually provided service to over 42,000 individuals within the Peel region alone.
Okay. Oh, that's astounding. That's quite a growth. So let's get down to the #1 question that people have. Is dementia and Alzheimer's the same? Is there a difference? And how do you distinguish the two?
Great question. We typically get this question a lot, and the best way we've described this to families is dementia and Alzheimer's are different yet the same. We look at dementia as an umbrella, a set of symptoms, and underneath that, the diseases. So Alzheimer's disease being one of them. But there are a number of different types of dementia that you can have. It just seems that Alzheimer's is the most readily diagnosed, the most that we know about, and the most predominant right now. But there's different types like frontal temporal lobe dementia, pugilistic dementia, we have Lewy body dementia that typically is seen with those that have Parkinson's disease. So we have to look at, if I'm going to use an analogy, cancer. Cancer has a set of symptoms, and then there's different types of cancer. Dementia is the same. Dementia has a set of symptoms, and then there's different types that you might be diagnosed into later on.
Okay. So if you meet the criteria, then you might be diagnosed with Alzheimer's as the underlying condition of dementia.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what are some of the warning signs of Alzheimer's?
We have to keep in mind that dementia and Alzheimer's is not a natural part of aging. Yes, we do lose our memory as we get older. I mean, I'm the queen of Post-it notes in my office, and we're bombarded by 60,000 marketing messages a day. So our brain is always on and it's always being active. But what we need to keep in mind when we are looking at whether or not it's just aging versus Alzheimer's or dementia are the really key warning signs. Yes, there is significant memory loss with dementia and Alzheimer's, but there's also other things as well. There's depression that comes along with it. There is apathy, so a loss of motivation or wanting to do activities that you would have loved to have done early on in your life. Really not understanding how to process things anymore. For instance, making a cup of coffee that you've done for 30 years. Now you're getting to the point where you're not remembering all of the steps to make that cup of coffee. or forgetting where you put your car keys. So instead of leaving them in your pocket, you've now left them in the sugar bowl or in the freezer ice cube tray. Another indicator would be dressing, not understanding time or date. So having someone dress in a parka in July or getting up to go to work at 10 p.m. rather than 10 a.m. Those tend to be those warning signs or those red flags where we'll speak to families and say, you really should be having another discussion with your healthcare professional to see if there's something else or another underlying cause, whether it be dementia, Alzheimer's, or maybe another concern.
Okay. So what's the prevalence of Alzheimer's in the region of Peel?
In the region of Peel, typically what we say, we have 42,000 clients compared to what the population is right now, and that's growing around 2 to 3% every fiscal year for our organization. There was a report that was put out about 4 years ago by a researcher named Hodgkins, and he had predicted by 2016 that 40,000 individuals would be impacted. We've actually surpassed that now in 2016, and we're only looking to see the growth more so in 2017, even in our organization and some of our surrounding partners as well.
So how can someone prevent Alzheimer's, or is it even preventable?
Alzheimer's disease, there's a lot of research right now going into seeing what the makeup is and what are the effects and how do we get that disease. Right now it is a terminal illness, and there's no real preventable ways of not getting it if you are, you know, susceptible to it. What we do promote with families are protecting your brain. So ensuring that our children, adults, we're wearing a helmet, we're not, you know, getting hit in the head a lot, because again that could lead to a pugilistic dementia. Ensuring that we're keeping active and not being socially isolated, as well as exercise is huge, and making sure that you're trying something new. And it could be as simple as brushing your teeth with the other hand, always challenging your brain. Puzzles, activities, tons of water helps as well, and also having a great diet. So we really promote a green, leafy green diet, lots of vegetables, omega-3s, really to ensure that you're maintaining your health so that if you are to get the disease, it might be a little bit later.
So just keeping that gray matter active and engaged all the time.
Absolutely. Challenging yourself, stepping outside of that bubble, and really engaging yourself in community. And the more that you're engaged, the better it actually has health benefits wise.
Okay. When we get back, we'll be speaking to Mary-Lynn Peters, a nurse practitioner at the Delirium Health Partners, and is the current president of the Board of Directors for Alzheimer's Society Peel. Stay with us. Welcome back to About Seniors Talk TV. Regardless of your current health condition, there might be a time when going to the hospital is inevitable. Regardless if you're an older adult or not, my next guest is a nurse practitioner with a specialization in geriatrics at Delirium Health Partners. She's also the president of the board of directors for the Alzheimer's Society Peel and has been on the board since 2011. She brings us years of experience in the healthcare front. I introduce to you Mary-Lynn Peters. Welcome, Mary-Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So what are the most common reasons that older adults go to the ER?
Well, it varies by age group. In the younger, older adults, say 65 to 85, we typically will see medical concerns such as chest pain, abdominal pain, dizziness, weakness, and falls. In the older adult, 85 and up, the most common reason is falling, then followed by some of the other concerns such as chest pain and trouble breathing. So interesting switch that as we get that little bit older, falls are our main reason for seeking medical attention.
So when individuals are going in, particularly for falls, does that alert some triggers in the hospital to either to develop a care plan, to get families to contact CCC? What really happens?
When people come into hospital, when they're admitted to hospital because of a fall, we do a screening, a risk assessment when they are first admitted to hospital to alert us to that possibility that they might fall, and that does trigger a whole cascade of interventions. Things about the layout of their hospital room, where the equipment is in the room, the call bell, how frequently the nursing staff are coming in, getting them up, getting them mobilized, and assessing their mobility when they're up doing those things. If the person has come to hospital with a fall but doesn't need to stay in hospital, our teams in our emergency departments have a program called the Quick Response Program, where assessments are made on older adults and recommendations to agencies such as the community CCAC, Community Care Access Center. I had a momentary blip there. CCAC can get involved at that point. We do also run fall prevention programs through the hospital that are offered in the community, and one is also offered in the hospital called Strong and Steady and Stronger and Steadier, that help people who have had a fall or are noted to be at risk for falling.
So keeping with falls, because it is a serious matter when it comes to the older seniors, what are the most common reasons for falls?
Well, older adults fall for a lot of the same reasons you and I do. Slippery floor, uneven pavement, poor lighting, rushing. But then there are some additional reasons or additional things that contribute to the falls of older persons, such as health issues. We know that certain disease states can predispose people to falling. So people who've had strokes, people who have Parkinson's disease, people who have diabetes and have poor sensation in their feet are more likely or more prone to falling. Also, certain medications can increase a person's risk of falling. So if a person is taking water pills or blood pressure pills, sedatives, sleeping pills, those can increase their risk for falling. We know also that certain conditions such as loss of control of the bladder, urinary incontinence, that makes people rush typically to the bathroom, and then they're more likely to fall.
And what are the potential serious effects of a fall with an older senior?
There are several. For many older adults, a fall is a sentinel event in their life that sort of heralds a downward decline in function. Not every fall has serious injuries, physical injuries, but many falls create an emotional trauma, if you will. If you've ever been outside in the winter and slipped on the ice, after you've picked yourself up and looked around to make sure nobody saw, you're hesitant when you start walking again, aren't you? You pick and choose where you're going to put your feet.
Very much so.
With an older person, if they've fallen, that fear of falling again becomes quite overwhelming at times, or it can become overwhelming at times. And so what they often will do is restrict their mobility. They may say, oh, I'm not going to go out, or, oh, I'm not going to go outside, or I'm not going to walk around, I'm not going to do certain activities because they're frightened that they might fall again. What happens is then they become weaker. The muscles get disused and weaker, and then that makes them even more likely to fall when they do go out. And it creates, it creates this downward spiral of deconditioning.
So even when an injury is not sustained, it has that psychological impact on the client.
It can.
Where they become more constricted in their own home.
Absolutely.
And be confined to their own home.
Leading to isolation and then
So how can one help prevent falls?
Well, first and foremost, and you hear this about everything when we talk about prevention, is stay active, stay healthy, eat a healthy diet, pay attention to foods that support your bone health, but also being physically active with weight-bearing activities and activities that can help with balance and mobility, flexibility. Things like Tai Chi, for example.
So essentially it's doing the opposite of what people do when they do fall.
It is, and you've got to
pick yourself up.
Get back on that horse, pick yourself up, yeah, which is hard. But that's why there are some fall prevention programs available in the community to help people with that activity. When you think about someone who perhaps has some other health concerns, maybe they've got arthritis, and they're fearful of what an activity or an exercise program might do to their other health issues. They should go see their physician first, but then go to some of these specialized programs that know how to help people with those conditions and help them become more active.
Okay. So what's some of the advice that you can share with our viewers of, how to prepare yourself before you get to the hospital?
Well, firstly, for older persons when they come to the hospital, I hate to say it, but it will probably take a fair bit of time. And the reason for that is that we know that older persons typically have more than one health challenge. As we age, all of us, the chance of acquiring chronic health conditions increases. And so when you have multiple health conditions impacting your physical well-being, it makes it a bit of a conundrum for the physician in the emergency department to try to sort out what's going on. What's causing the symptoms while you're here. You may be coming in with trouble sleeping, for instance, and that could be because of depression, or it could be because of heart failure and you're waking up at night with trouble breathing, or it could be because you have pain that's not being managed. So these sorts of ruling in, ruling out processes take time. So number one, it's going to take time. Number two is, if you can, bring someone with you. It's really good to have that advocate for you, someone who can speak on your behalf if you're too tired to or feeling too unwell to, someone who can run to the Tim Hortons to get you a tea or something. And that would be the other thing too. Come prepared.
To stay a while.
Bring your medicines. Bring a list of your medicines if you can. Bring a list of your past health history if you can, and your doctors, so that when you get to that emergency room, you can share that information with the team and they'll know, and that will just help so much. They'll know who to contact. Oh, I see you've seen this heart doctor. Let me give him a call.
Thanks so much, Mary-Lynn. We're going to take a quick break and speak more right after this. Welcome back to About Seniors Talk TV. We're talking to Mary-Lynn. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I've heard something called the 3 Ds. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. That refers to what we call the geriatric giants. 3 of the geriatric giants, or 3 of the major concerns that face older persons. And they stand for delirium, dementia, and depression. The other one that I would lump in with geriatric giants would be falls.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about delirium. It sounds like it has an interesting meaning.
Delirium is something, it does have an interesting meaning. It's been around for as long as we've had physicians, I suspect, because they're the ones who name all of these things. Delirium means a sudden onset of confusion, a sudden change in a person's thinking, very abrupt, typically happens over days or hours. And there can be fluctuations in that person's level of awareness, so they may be very drowsy, or they may be very alert, or they may fluctuate between the two. And there can be also misunderstanding of the environment. They may see, for example, if they're in hospital, they may see their intravenous line and misunderstand it and think that it's a snake. So misperceptions, changes in thinking, and fluctuations.
Wow. So is that preventable? And how does one determine that that's different from dementia?
It is preventable to a certain extent. The literature tells us that 30 to 40% of cases of delirium could be prevented. We know it's fairly common, depending on what the person is coming into hospital for. Upwards of 50% of older persons potentially could develop delirium while they're in hospital. So if we can prevent 30 to 40% of those, that can make a significant impact. What delirium does is that it may make the person more vulnerable to falling when they're in hospital. They're misunderstanding their environment, they're a bit impulsive, so they might try to climb out of bed and fall and injure themselves. Or they may pull out medically necessary tubes or lines and injure themselves in that regard. To prevent it, the key things are staying well hydrated while you're in hospital, eating and drinking well, making sure that the person's bowels and bladder are moving and emptying properly, that their pain is well managed, and that they're up, that they're out of bed, they're walking as much as possible to maintain physical mobility, but also to maintain that day and night balance, because sometimes when we come into hospital there's this tendency or desire to curl up in a ball and sleep all day. And we know for older persons that's counterproductive, because then it just totally throws their whole sleep-wake cycle off and makes the delirium more likely to occur.
So understanding that these things mitigate delirium, are they also the very things that can contribute to delirium?
Good question. Yes, they are. For example, if the person has unrelieved pain, significant unrelieved pain, that can contribute to a delirium. Similarly, urinary retention, a bladder full of urine, and that distension of the bladder can contribute to delirium. that whole day-night thing that I was just mentioning, definitely. Now those are the sorts of predisposing factors, but there are also some precipitating factors, things like certain illnesses, having a stroke, having a heart attack, various other sorts of things. Medications are huge contributors to delirium.
Okay. So is someone predisposed to depression following an episode of delirium?
Not depression, no, but dementia, yes. We do know that there is a small percentage of people who are more likely to develop dementia after having had an episode of delirium.
And how is that connected? I mean, it just seems that dementia is such a wide-angle disease or a symptom of disease. So how is that directly correlated with delirium?
Well, I think of it this way. Delirium, an episode of delirium, is as if your brain has just had a stress test. If you've ever had a heart problem and you've had to go to the hospital to have a heart stress test where you get on the treadmill and you walk, and that shows the cardiologist how strong or vulnerable your heart is. Coming to hospital, for example, maybe having surgery is like a stress test for your brain. And what it just tells us is that the person's brain is vulnerable. And that whole concept of a vulnerable brain is the link, I think, to dementia. Delirium is distinctly different from dementia in that delirium is transitory. We have an abrupt onset, whereas dementia is usually a very gradual onset most of the time. But dementia is not transitory. Dementia is permanent and progressive. So you start to see how the two are different. Delirium very abrupt, usually very transitory once we've identified what's causing it, but some similarities with respect to the vulnerability of the brain.
So the end result of dementia, when it's associated with delirium, although the episode of delirium could be temporary, the end result, the affliction with dementia, is permanent?
Dementia is, by definition, permanent, yes.
So, Mary-Lynn, where can people go to get more information on what we're discussing here today?
There's a couple of places. The first one that I would recommend is the Mississauga Halton Lynn's website, and on that there's a resources tab that you can click, and that will take you to their link for all the resources available in our region. And there's a seniors tab within that that has senior-specific resources. Another great resource is the Alzheimer's Society Peel's website. There's lots of information on that and lots of links to support for people with dementia and their caregivers. Also, Trillium Health Partners Hospital website has great resources for the community as well and talks about specifically senior services and how you can access them.
Mary-Lynn, thanks so much for being on our show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of About Seniors Talk TV. I would like to thank my guests Brandi Deimling and Mary-Lynn Peters. For more information about the topics discussed today, you can reach me at volivera@inourcareservices.com. Thanks for watching.